Welcome to the Future of Tourism podcast. I'm David Peacock.
Stop owning your own content.
Young leaders are stepping up.
Bring everyone to the table
and imagine their world anew.
How do you cut through the clutter when it comes to recruitment and retention? How do you inculcate corporate culture in a predominantly remote workforce? Mike Gamble is a friend and ally to this industry. He's the CEO of SearchWide Global, dominant talent and recruitment entity in the sector in North America. His work to include, expand, and future-proof the industry is manifest in projects outside his core businesses, like the not-for-profit Force for Good Tourism Diversity Matters that was established in February 2021. Ryan Bolton has been in senior management and tech innovation for more than 2 decades, from Google through to voice over IP technology and all points in between. To his current role as VP of Product at Simpleview, he's worked extensively at managing both on-site and remote teams on mission-critical digital projects and products around the world. And he has very specific views as to what it takes to be competitive in the recruitment sector these days. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Ryan.
Morning, David.
Morning. Thanks for having us.
Hey, it's a pleasure to see you both again. Ryan, we'll start with you. How are you? Where are you? What's it like?
I'm great. Coming off of a very relaxing Thanksgiving holiday with the family. I'm usually based out of Pittsburgh, but I'm currently in Tucson at the Simpleview headquarters. And great to be here talking with you.
Very good. Mike, how are you? Where are you?
I'm great, David. Thank you. Same. Great Thanksgiving with the family. I'm in Minneapolis, and I think we're at about 6 inches of the snowstorm. We expect about 8 inches. So it's a little bit of a blizzard outside, but glad to be here.
Well, glad to have you both here. We've been monitoring and talking about the topic of equity, diversity, inclusion, employment, retention, attraction, corporate culture off and on throughout the entirety of COVID. And I think it changed a lot of things in its course. Why don't we start here, Mike? Give us a 30,000-foot view. We've been through the great layoff. We've been through the return to work. We've been through the incredible mobility of talent. I don't know how else to explain it. Where are we at in December 2022?
Yeah, great question, David. You know, you and I talked in 2020, and I think my quote was, it'll take years to absorb the talent that's been laid off and furloughed. Well, I was wrong about that. I mean, how we went from our industry was at about a 35% unemployment at the peak of COVID. The nation saw close to 17%. How in the world could we get below 4% so quickly? That's the question, right? And so what I would say about our industry is we still have a frontline issue. And it's a pretty big issue. There's still 1.1 million open jobs and not enough workers to fill those. But for the leadership pipeline, you know, the management VP and then the C-suite, that market is still tight, but it's starting to loosen up a little bit. The big issue that we're seeing today is housing, continues to be housing. You know, 8 months ago, 12 months ago, it was a lack of housing. Today, it's the lack of affordability and the ability for people to get in at a reasonable interest rate. And that's impacting people who we have to move, who aren't working remotely. That's an obstacle. And so that's, again, another interesting twist in this 2 or 3 years, that roller coaster that we've been on. But I think that pretty much sums it up from our perspective and from our clients' perspective.
Well, that's a good place to throw to you, Ryan. I mean, you start as the vice president of product at Simpleview not quite 3 years ago. You've been through this roller coaster ride, jumping on just as it all started to unfold. And then you've been through the whole recruitment difficulties and the rebuilding phase. Tell us what you've seen.
So just to clarify, I joined Simpleview in October of last year. So I was not a part of the DMO space through, the hardships of COVID. So I joined at a time where I feel like we were almost at a full rebound, right? And being a part of a software company that services the DMO space, my challenge is slightly different than DMOs specifically, right? I work for a software company. I have to compete with other software companies. So while we are in the DMO space and service the DMO space, I'm competing with everybody from the big guys like the Googles, the Twitters, the Amazons of the world, and probably more poignantly, the small, more intimate software companies that I prefer to work for, particularly at this point in my career, where individual contributors and leaders of small software firms can truly kind of see their work move the needle.
So in that context, Ryan, what's the competition for talent like?
It's fierce, right? So the challenge that the software industry faces today is that if I am not able to offer really every role within my organization, the product organization and the R&D organization, including engineering, I cannot be competitive. I simply can't be competitive on a national level. All things being equal, being pay, benefits, culture, and all the things that people care about when they join a company, that person is going to accept the remote role 10 out of 10 times. So if I am unable to offer my positions remote, I simply can't compete.
So, okay, Mike, listening to what Ryan said there, at the senior level in recruitment in tech, in our industry, the DMO industry, and its ancillary parts, you service many companies like Miles and Simpleview and MMGY with placements. When you see that kind of pressure, what kind of outcomes is that pressure creating in this industry?
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear Ryan's thoughts on the market today as we see the tech layoffs, and especially in Silicon Valley. What we're hearing from some of the other industry tech companies is that they're having a lot of success, finding the talent that perhaps was laid off by some of the bigger. So I'd love to hear Ryan's perspective on that. So we do have a couple of tech opportunities that we're searching right now, and last month on those assignments has loosened things up a bit, and our funnel is a bit more full than it would have been, Ryan, I would say probably 6 or 8 months ago. We were doing similar searches and it was a lot harder, I guess my point is, than it is today. So we feel like at least we're able to find and attract talent a little bit more quickly in the tech space today than we were even 6 or 8 months ago. I don't know if you're finding that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. The big guys, I think, are finding a very good way of automating a lot of their processes, which results in automating people out of roles. They're also focusing on their top contributors and paying them more to slim down their overall footprint as far as employee count. But as you alluded to earlier, there's still millions of jobs that are available that are unfilled today, and I think that bleeds into the tech sector, just like every other industry.
Yeah.
So let's pick that up at the point that you made to start with, though, Ryan. Mike, when you're looking at your the increasingly full funnel in terms of prospects, and I'm assuming these are prospects for placement, are you seeing the kind of demand for remote working that Ryan's talking about? That really, when you counsel a client these days, what's your point? What's your point on the flexibility around remote working?
It's in every conversation, David. It's a hard one with the DMOs for sure, but with the hotel companies, we have a pretty active hotel search practice. Boy, they're starting to really understand what Ryan just mentioned, is the flexibility piece is so critically important. And a couple of years ago, they would not have offered that. So even today, I think for the DMOs, the hard piece is juggling the need to be in the destination, no matter what role you play, versus the remote work. And I know the CEOs are really trying to balance that. So their stakeholders, by the way, who are there every day, servicing their hotels, their restaurants, their attractions, and then the DMOs have all this flexibility with their folks working remotely. It's become a challenge, and I know they're just trying to juggle it and do the best they can. But to Ryan's point, our talent funnels for jobs that are fully remote are about 5x what the ones are that require a move. And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's accurate. And he, as he knows, I mean, we can fill the funnel with great candidates a lot more quickly if there is ability to have a hybrid /remote work environment.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead, please, Ryan, please.
Yeah, it's just I love the fact that your experience is actually going through this today, Mike. When I joined Simpleview last October, you know, my CEO Ryan George was I won't say he was against remote work, but he asked me, he says, as you staff this organization, as you staff your team, will you focus on local talent in Tucson or Phoenix so that they're close, or will you open up these opportunities remotely? And I said, well, of course I'm going to have to open them up remotely. And he asked me why. And I thought it was an interesting question, that it was just a why. And he wasn't posing it in a way that was against me posting these roles remotely. He just wanted some validation, because who doesn't love to have colleagues in the office that they're rubbing elbows with on a daily basis? It's fun, right? I love being around my team as well. So I told him, give me a day. So I went to the tank and I pulled up a bunch of reports that I had kind of armchair read, McKinsey, Abbott Research, what was the other one? Ergotron, and kind of compiled all these figures to give to him. And some really interesting statistics came up. So what would you guess is the absolute worst part of somebody's day, right? When they have to commute to the office, what would you say what their response would be to the worst part of their day would be?
To that, I think it would be the commute, right? Getting ready for work, the commute, yeah, all right, for sure.
Nailed it on the head, Mike. 92%. This is not like a majority. This is an overwhelming majority. 92% said their pre-work routine and their commute to work. 92%. Yeah. And doing this research, some other kind of raw statistics kind of bubbled up to the top. Working remote, morale and general happiness up 62% if you have a remote role. Performance up 16%. Productivity up 41%. These are folks that would usually spend anywhere between an hour and a half and 3 hours of their day from their pre-work routine to the time their foot steps in their front door, right? An hour of that probably gets, given right back to the company in the form of extra hours being, worked throughout the day. So in my opinion, there's a ton of benefit to embracing remote work and empowering folks to, do their best work without somebody kind of hovering over their shoulder.
Okay, so that's one of those opportunities that open up. The idea that happier people working more diligently when they work, I buy that. But what about the question of corporate culture, guys? How do you inculcate corporate culture remotely? Or I'm going to take it to the next level. The question following is how do we create those thought exchange groups? Can we do that remotely? I'm a big proponent. I'm fully in on remote working, but I am struggling in the last sort of year now to really start to think of the things that we're sort of losing with it that I want to mitigate somehow. I'll tell you, I give you a great opposite example. During COVID, I thought the democratization of meetings was fabulous. That Hollywood Squares model opened itself up to a bunch of voices that were not being heard getting equal airplay. And boy, that created some great ideas. So I see the benefits of the remote part, but I'm starting to worry about some of the cross-pollination that goes on between human beings that involves not just visuals and audible, but meta communication and all of that stuff that we are really good at as humans. So that's the second question. The first one is, how do you inculcate culture in a remote workforce?
Well, I guess what I would say, I would jump on, piggyback a little bit what Ryan was saying. Gallup also, we follow the Gallup studies, and this year, they say well-being, number one most important issue to the worker. And so, David, if you think about it, if they're happy in their work environment and their well-being is, they just feel good about their life. Listen, people want to live their best life and have a job that fits in with that. I mean, let's be honest. And so if what we've described, they have that, boy, developing a good culture is actually a little easier because they're not grinding it out to get to the office and worrying about what they have to wear. And gosh, what am I going to have for lunch? And, all these things are all stressors. But here are a couple of things that we do. I've got a whole remote workforce and our clients do as well, is that first you can structure your team meetings differently, your entire staff meeting differently, and you make sure that maybe once a quarter I make sure that our vertical teams are seeing each other face to face, possibly at industry events. They love that because they're there, they're learning, we're seeing customers, and by the way, they're all getting together. And so that's a great time to brainstorm. So we are very intentional about how we travel and where we travel. And so that is much for our clients, it's also for us as well. And so where I can put senior team together and mid-level team, and so that people are really feeding off of that. And then as a full unit, try to get together, more than just perhaps once a year. But then lastly, listen, at the end of the day, the culture's got to be authentic, and it has to stand for something that's meaningful to the people who work there. And that's more than just getting face to face. Is it something they believe in? Is there something that's more that comes with that brand and with the leadership of that organization that they can buy into? And I know Ryan will speak to that because I know Simpleview has that. And we have found that it's the purpose, and you can do that this way via Zoom as well as you can face to face, but you've got to sprinkle in the face to face whenever that you can.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Agree with everything you said, Mike. I would put the charge on leadership to distill that culture down, right? I think it all starts with passion, and I think it all starts with a want to better whatever industry you're in, or take over whatever industry you are in, and really move the needle and change the world, right? I think as long as you are able to surround yourself with passionate people, you're going to be successful, right? And as long as leadership does take that feedback to heart, send out quarterly surveys to, what can we do better, right? And take that feedback to heart and make it actionable, and show results or show output from those surveys to the employee base. They're going to believe in their leadership. They're going to work hard for that leadership, right? And I also couldn't agree more that you have to get people together in a room, face to face, in person, at least 4 times a year. In my opinion, we do quarterly retreats for the product org at Simpleview. It's probably my 4 favorite times of the year when I get to see everybody from my organization in the same room at the same place doing something fun, decompressing, trying not to talk about work too much, disconnecting, enjoying each other's company, and then hitting it hard and getting back to work again.
So, Ryan, I'm going to take you back. When we actually first thought about this podcast, it actually came on the heels of a question I had asked you, which was really that very direct question: how do you do corporate culture remotely? And you were ardent about one thing, and I think it's really important to underline it. You said it's really up to the managers. So you have a series of managers who actually have a series of managers, and so on. But you really do find that in the online space, it comes down to an incredible level of engagement and involvement at a management employee relationship with direct reports, right?
Well, not just direct reports, but indirect reports, right? I have weekly one-on-ones with every one of my direct reports. I have biweekly one-on-ones with anybody that wants to put a skip level on my calendar. Doesn't matter if they're in my org, doesn't matter if they're outside my org, right? I always make myself accessible and available. And I truly do believe that it's the onus of the management to breed that culture. Excuse me, I operate a little bit differently, and I hope that my flavor rubs off to some of my colleagues and peers. But I allow my team to set their own goals, right? We operate in an OKR environment. We have objectives and key results that we all march toward. Starts with a company OKR, distills down to a departmental OKR, to a team OKR, to an individual OKR. And my team gets to set their own OKRs. Now, do they have a conversation with their manager to ensure that those OKRs are ambitious enough? Maybe too ambitious. We need to rein them back a little bit. We always have those people maybe reaching a little too high. Of course, right? That's just the conversation that needs to happen between, two colleagues, a report and their manager. But as long as we're in agreement that what you're marching toward, what you're trying to accomplish, is pertinent, poignant, and ambitious, I don't need to micromanage you. I don't want to micromanage you. I want to be as hands-off as possible and knock down any roadblocks that may be an impediment to you achieving those goals that you set and that we both signed off on. So that is really kind of my methodology and approach to, keeping people and teams happy and firing on all cylinders.
Super place to transition here. When it comes to the concept of synergistic work, though, 4 meetings a year, we're making baselines and stuff here, but what are some of the other things we need to pay attention to as we make the shift? That's to say, we gained some things through the COVID crisis that we learned about working remotely. We certainly have bigger, more empowered teams with a broader diversity of places and thoughts. What else do we need to remember now as we're working in these hybrids environments? And Mike, I'm sort of me wonders if there's going to evolve the home team and the away team in businesses, the group that's constantly at the core of a place that's in place. How does that play out? What do we need to look for?
Yeah, that last part, and again, you have a lot of DMOs likely listening, and this is a struggle for them. And so when they think about the hybrid, they're saying, hey, we want you in the office maybe 3 days a week. Pick the 3 days. Well, you can imagine Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday most popular. So I tell them, I said, that's okay. People want to work remotely on Friday and Monday. Oh, well, you can do a lot of your team, face-to-face team work on that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a lot of your stakeholder work on those days. But back to the all remote piece, again, you've got to create the virtual water cooler and know that all of your smaller teams, we've got some groups that work in 2 or 3 person teams. We have others that'll be 6 or 7. And Ryan made the point, I have a session every other week with a non-leadership. So with different pods of the organization that just get to spend an hour with me and talk about whatever they want to talk about. So it's just kind of unfettered access. Let's talk about, and there's no question out of bounds. We're going to engage. I'm going to listen. We're going to have a little fun, but I'm basically going to empower you to bring things to me that we can remove some obstacles. And they love that because it's authentic. It allows them a real voice to be heard. They've got a seat at the table, especially the Z and the millennials love that kind of environment. They have to have that. And if we want to talk about retention, that's critical issue number 1 is to engage with them, listen to them, and I mean really listen, and then empower them to go on. Ryan, I love your goal setting thoughts. That's the key to remote work, and you've got to set the right goals and then let people do their job, and that's it. And so, but again, I can't stress enough, David, this is a tough issue for our DMO friends, because again, they're stakeholders. They're going to be a point where they're going to say enough of the remote working for the DMOs. Like, why can't they all be here? I'm grinding it out, running my 1,000-room hotel every day. I'd like them to be in their office a little more often. And so that's going to be a tough balancing act, I think.
So Mike, you're bringing in a very interesting perspective and a variable that I will add to the mix then, which is there are businesses, we think of frontline businesses automatically as having staff who are in place, but there are businesses that are, massive companies that have data divisions and research divisions, but also have quasi frontline divisions in terms of engagement and working with councils and things like that. It really plays out based on a new model that addresses those realities. There's no one, a place will have a remote workforce and they will have a frontline workforce and they'll have a quasi frontline workforce, but that does all have to play out still, doesn't it?
We have to think about it differently at all levels, from frontline to C-suite, and it's about flexibility and gig, and that's going to take our greater industry a little longer. Those who have to operate the venues, if you will, that's hard work. I get it, but you're going to get better talent, retain better talent if you say, hey, you can only work 4 hours a day. That works for me. What time? And you see the commercials. Amazon has been doing this for years, and they're attracting people because they're offering opportunities that fit with their lives. And our greater industry, travel, tourism, hospitality, and events, we have to do the same thing, or we're gonna continue to lose the battle for talent at all levels. And so, fresh thinking, like with Ryan has, is going to be really important, I think, at all levels and in all sectors for sure.
So as we deal with this big shift going forward, I ask, half jokingly, are we moving fast enough? Are we adapting fast enough? I know we're adapting as fast as we can. I know we're moving quickly. There's still a huge rebound flux from this that we don't understand. I see a couple more years before we reach a Q point where we understand what a gig worker, remote worker embedded work or frontline worker really means, and especially if we go at all of that with a sense of equality across those things, not parity necessarily, but we're in flux for a while. What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I think you run the risk of damaging culture if you force it, right? So I think it needs to happen naturally, but it does have to happen, right? Again, I don't see a world in the near future where your accounting person needs to be in an office, or your you know, of course, there probably needs to be a couple of IT people in the office to make sure that the local network stays up. But do you need your whole IT team in the office? No, you just don't. So it will happen, and I think it would behoove all industries, not just the DMO industry, because there's tons of industries that struggle with this. I think it would behoove them to start thinking forward about this and how they're going to approach it as an individual entity, right? Because one shoe doesn't fit all in this world, and everybody's going to have to come up with a unique solution that retains the great culture that you have built with your company or entity or organization or whatever, but allows your team, the people that you count on and the people that count on you, the flexibility to, as Mike said, right, live their best life, right? Avoid that 90 plus percent. I think it was 92%. I've got the sheet here. 92% of everybody's worst part of their day in their pre-work routine and their commute. So,
yeah, David, I have to interject this. It's interesting. Our last two HR leaders that we've placed in the last 3 months were both remote. And if I would have suggested that to our clients pre-COVID, we would have been fired before we were hired. And I'm not being overly dramatic. They would have said, have you lost, what kind of a search firm are you? Have you lost your mind? You know, we will. So to Ryan's point, HR leaders that are going to work remote, who would have thought? And yeah, of course, you know, that's good thinking, and it's going to work. It's going to be a terrific solution for these two clients, but things have changed, and
they continue to change.
Yeah.
So we opened up with a statement that Price Waterhouse, Air Miles, and Plenty of Fish are all shedding office space. Do you ever see a day when the big banks or corporations actually have embedded living space in their towers and it's a perk? Like, we're going to have to rethink a lot of things, right?
My wife's company, for example, the company she was with formerly, as soon as COVID hit, they closed down a 2-floor, 168 person office, which saved the company around $960,000 a year, which they could directly invest in their employees. They decided to go all in on remote day one, as soon as the pandemic hit, and it was nothing but a success for them. Does that need to be everybody's plan? Of course not, right?
Mike, do you see any other companies doing anything innovative in the attraction space with the shift?
Yeah, well, you and I talked, I think in 2020 when we chatted about this office space issue, David, and you know how I feel about it. It's not good news for our DMOs. I mean, a healthy, vibrant inner city with workers every day in and out is good for our tourism economy for sure, and good for real estate and good for economic development, period. So I worry about that. But yeah, I mean, listen, every company in every sector of our industry is really thinking long and hard about this. It again goes back to what we've already talked about. The ones who are operating facilities are really struggling to understand how do some get this benefit of remote and hybrid while others every single day have to be there. And again, what I will say is think differently about your frontline team too, and the ones who have to be on property. They can have flexibility, they can have gig, they can have all of these similar perks. They're just going to work a little differently, and it's okay.
And I think another thing, just to piggyback off that a little bit, is the co-working space is always an option, right? Young people want to be around other young people. So it doesn't have to be a complete sacrifice of those, properties in downtown areas. They could be easily converted into co-working spaces where people from multiple companies could come together and be around people in like industries or unlike industries, right? But just folks that are now empowered to work remotely that still want to be around, folks their own age. So always an option to, for companies to provide like a stipend to $300 a month to go get your own co-working space or something like that. So there's options everywhere.
Mhm.
Super. All right. Well, listen, guys, I totally thank you both for being here. It's always exciting and illuminating to talk to either of you. In closing, quick thoughts. What are the values and benefits driving the future of talent, the future of work? Whoever wants to go first.
Take it, Mike.
Yeah, for me, it's the authenticity of the culture, and that can happen virtually and live, and as Ryan has pointed out, it's up to the leader to decide on how they want to lead and show up and engage and listen and empower the team. And so let's not get hung up on where or how we do it, but the leader, has to lead and has to create that authentic culture that connects with all generations. So those 4 or 5 generations we have in the workforce, especially those Zs and millennials, expect that, and they're going to choose their employer based on it.
Super. Honestly, I would have said the exact same thing. Let's make sure that our leaders are thinking about the mental health and long-term goals of their team. Surround themselves with passionate people that embrace the culture and the goals of the company, and it's a recipe for success. Right? You will not fail if you surround yourself with the right people, have the right leaders in place, and find the correct way to drive your team towards success.
Well, guys, thanks. That was great. Have a great day.